Hi, okay, so this is Sierra Jackson for ICOM 211. This is my project presentation. So I started with defining the problem. After all of the brainstorming, I finally came up with how to dress for an interview. I had originally come up with a lot of different ideas, and after creating the list of 30 problems, I ended up not even going with one of the ones at the beginning like I originally thought I would. I ended up with coming up with one of the ones at the end, and that's where the interview one came in. I had a couple different ideas for this type of problem, and I wanted to go kind of more with if for someone who's just entering the workforce, like a college student who already has a basic knowledge of how to do the whole resume process and the cover letter process and the application, and they're already aware of all of that type of stuff. They've probably taken classes because I know most of us are required to take some sort of professional development class. So I really wanted to focus on more of the getting into the interview and kind of just focusing on the interview part of it. So my main focus was kind of just how the importance of a first impression would be. For example, when you're going into an interview, they first thing they're going to notice about you is the way you're dressed, and then maybe like your handshake or something, but it's mainly going to be the way that you're dressed. I wanted to kind of go for the more less obvious do's and don'ts concepts. As I was researching, I kind of noticed on different websites that show you like a do column and a don't column, any photos that they used. I feel like the pictures were pretty obvious for someone that would be in my kind of audience. For example, I saw one where they did, of course, the do column had a photo of someone who was properly dressed for an interview, and then the don't side had a girl and she was almost in like club wear, where like a short dress and just not even like a blazer or anything like professional. And I feel like that's just a little obvious for most people that are going to be in my audience, like the kids that are in colleges and universities and are learning that kind of stuff. I feel like they obviously know they shouldn't dress the way they would to go out to go to an interview. So I kind of wanted to focus more on the whole. So yeah, we know we're going to dress professional, but what level of professional? So like the example as business professional versus business casual. That's kind of more the problem I'm trying to address on how students sometimes aren't sure which one they're supposed to go with, and how business professional is typically like the attire you would want to do. I knew I wanted to use graphics that explained the educational information a little better, and so I did a lot of research to kind of figure out what types of visuals I would want to use. So, during my research, I looked at a bunch of different interactive designs I found online. One of the keywords I was kind of using to find these were sort of, I googled how to dress interactive design or clothes for other cultures, or just basically different like things that you could figure out using that would have the type of layout I would want, which included kind of having a model of a human body or a person or like a mannequin, and how that would kind of give a good visual and let the person click through each of those parts to figure out which part we're talking about, and that would break up the information in kind of a more interesting way. After looking at all these different ones, I noticed they all incorporated that sort of design, and since I knew that was something I wanted to use, I played around with them a little bit. There were ones where you could click on the different parts of the body. There was one I found, it was like a model of the human bones. I knew by searching for something like that I would find what I was kind of looking for. And so you'd click on each bone, and a little pop up window would come up and that tells you more information about it, sort of the name of it, and just a couple facts. And so I knew I wanted something like that. That way I could give my information in a more interesting way without than just having a big block of text for people to read, because they could find that in other places that aren't in interactive design. Also, during my research, I found some elements that I definitely wanted to avoid in my design. I found some designs where I was struggling to navigate through them. I got stuck on one page where I could not figure out which page, how I was supposed to get to the next place of what I was supposed to do, and I just had to keep clicking on different things that looked like they were clickable, if that makes sense, and that one kind of irritated me a little bit, so I wanted to make sure I definitely avoided that when I began my design. I wanted to make it very clear where the user was supposed to go and just kind of make it more user-friendly. So yeah, I definitely focused a lot on my navigation buttons and everything like that, and kind of just making everything very user-friendly. Okay, so here is my design. This is the main page. I'll go ahead and start a little bit with kind of the overall design of what I wanted it to look like. I chose these colors, this color palette, just because my whole idea was trying to give off that they should be dressing neutral, nothing too crazy. So I wanted to go along with that, and I didn't want to take any distraction away from the other pictures and elements I have throughout the design, and I just thought these colors were appropriate. So I chose like the nice maroon red, and I have different shades of gray throughout. And so I just wanted this main page to kind of be the first thing that they see, so that they know sort of what they're getting into. I originally, during my design, was going to put some sort of video on this page, but after we had our kind of checkup meeting, you showed me a couple examples that sort of had designs that had this type of title page almost, and I liked that idea, so I went ahead and changed it to being more of a title page, and just basically kind of the way it says, like, so you got the interview, now what? Because that this is meant for an audience that are in that position where they've done the research on the company, they've applied, they've sent their resume, they've received an interview offer, and so they've accepted that. So now they're kind of sitting there like, all right, so I've got the interview, but I don't have the job yet, so I know my work's not done. Now what do I want to do? And so that's where they would go to the next page. With my navigation, back to that, I wanted to make sure that it was obvious what the user was supposed to do next. So I make sure all of my navigation to go back and forth through pages is this black color box with the dotted lines. All of it matches throughout so that people know. They'll maybe think in their mind, oh, I've seen that before, I know what that does, and so that's, if they're wanting to navigate, they'll look for that or see it and know what that means. So I went ahead and also I made the size so that it will pop up larger when they scroll over it like this, and that way they know that they can click it. Alright, so this is my next page. It's kind of a timeline of events on how an interview would kind of go. So first the person would apply for the job, and so I did the outline again here. It's not navigation, so I chose a different color just to kind of make it more, this just means that you can click on it and get your information. And so this is the before section. I put it in a timeline like this just because I wanted to make it very visually like easy to read, so a person can be like, oh, well, I'm currently, if they're looking at this, they can be like, well, I've already applied for the job, I've got the interview, so I've seen that part, so I can skip that step, and I'm preparing for the interview, so I can click the practice your skills spot, and then it gives you new information here, where it says, you've got the interview, that's great, but now what? Basically, I explain just kind of a brief summary of what they should do to prepare for the interview, more mentally than not quite getting to the close part yet. I don't go too in depth here because this is more about just the first impression type of thing, but I wanted to give a little bit of an overview since that is all important as well. So I tell them how they should be practicing interview questions and practice all different types. So that's the preparation section. And again, I have these buttons kind of getting bigger, that way they know that they're to click on them, and when they do, it pops out new information here. Basically, like I was stressing the importance of a first impression, so I've never underestimate the importance of a first impression. In a job interview, a large part of this will end up being the attire that you choose to show up in. And so that kind of gives them a little lead in into what we're going to get into at the interview day stage. So again, with the navigation, they'll know to here, they click next, takes them to this page here, and this is where I wanted to personalize this a little bit, because I know not everybody is the same, obviously, who will be looking at this. I wasn't targeting specifically males or females, because I know both of them need this kind of advice, and both people are interviewing, trying to get jobs. Everybody's really trying to, and so I wanted to make this kind of where they can customize the information that they're about to get. So I have here where they can select one, and they can select the male tab or the female tab. I'm going to go ahead and start with the male tab, and we can go to that page first. Okay, so here is kind of the main meat of this whole thing, where it gives them the actual advice on how to dress. I'll start with the photos, since that's really the first thing a user would see coming onto this page. I knew I wanted to do a photo that kind of showed the body of a person. I wasn't sure if I was going to do that as more of like a cartoony stick figure type of look, or if I wanted to use an actual photo. I wanted to use my own photos so that they would all look consistent. So I did take these, and I was able to make sure everything looked consistent that way. And then I used Photoshop to kind of cut around them and place them in there so that it's a nice little visual for the user as they're getting the information. I do, as you see, I have a do column, the dress for success, and then I have a don't section. Now my don't section, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to make it a little less obvious than if I would have had him in jeans and, say, like a Star Wars t-shirt, which would be totally great to wear any other day, but not for an interview at like a big company or something in business. And so I wanted to, because most people understand that that's not what you would wear, so I really don't think it's necessary for me to put it on here. I want to show them more what some people may think is okay, because it's kind of more businessy than they usually would dress day to day, but it's not quite there at interview attire. So for example, on the left, I have what would be considered business professional, and then on the right side, I show business casual, since that's sometimes misconstrued. And so I wanted to make sure they were able to know the difference between the two. Right here, I explain what business professional is. I say how it's always a safe choice for a job interview. It looks put together while it's never really too overdressed or underdressed. For example, if you were interviewing at some big company for business or something like that. Here, I have these little buttons next to the person's body that show each little section of their outfit. I start with the first one here, and like the other buttons I had before, they get larger as I click them, so that the person knows if they hover over it, oh, that's something I can click. So I start out with explaining the hair and the facial hair, and that's why the button's up in this area at the top. I explain the different things that are kind of the facts about interviewing, what their hair should look like, facial hair should look like, and then also some other grooming tips such as nails and just basic hygiene. If you click this next one here, the user can see what their shirt and tie should look like. I explain basically all of it, so the entire thing, like they should have a crisp shirt, should be clean. I have the colors that are typically best. All of this information I did receive kind of just based off my own knowledge. I do work in the Career Center, and it's going to be my second year working there, and so I've kind of just learned all this knowledge over time and through taking an interview class and doing practice interviews. So I've given the colors, all the different options they should be looking at, explaining how they should have simple patterns, such as the one that is shown here, and basically just that bow ties are out of the question. Typically, the less flashy, the better. It's always better to be safe than trying to be too overdone. And I also show that in the right side by showing that they should not have a bow tie on. If you click the next one, it explains the type of suit they should be wearing. Since I am in the male page, I'm talking about what is good for a male to be wearing. Typically a navy or gray suit. And then I kind of explain things they shouldn't have and they should have. Next, you click down here, it explains the shoes. So outside the buttons down there by the shoes. Basically just gives plenty of information for the user about what they need to know. So I'm going to go ahead now and I will go back. It takes me back to this page, that navigation there. Let me know that I back here where I had selected male, so now if I was wanting to change my mind and decide I want to know how a female is supposed to dress, then I would click this one. And this takes me to the female page. I wanted to format it very similar to the male page. I used the same layout so that it would kind of keep everything really matching and organized. I'm always really big on matching, whether it's like with my outfit or the way I'm designing something. I like to keep things to a simple, like 3 or 4 or less color scheme, and I like things to kind of just go together, the same font choices, and just make everything sort of put together. So this one here, I again explain what business professional is, just in case the user ends up only selecting one of the pages. I wanted it to be on both pages. That way, no matter which one they select, they are seeing that. Again, I have a don't side, which sort of shows what could be considered as business casual for a woman, and then on the left, what would be business professional. I do have her in pants here, but I do explain in this that it's okay for a woman to wear like a skirt suit or a pantsuit. Either's fine. I just didn't want to make my roommate go out and buy a skirt for the photo. So again here, if you click these little dots, first one here right by her head shows how a woman's hair and makeup should be. I do explain how lighter makeup with the intent of just highlighting the natural features is important and should be applied, and then I mentioned to avoid dark eyeshadows and vibrant lipstick, as you can see she has on in the don't section. Basically, then I go down just like the other one. So if you click here, it explains her blazer and blouse, different colors that are appropriate to stick to a neutral color palette. Again, with why I kind of wanted the whole color scheme to be pretty neutral looking to go with the whole theme and the information I'm giving, so that it wasn't kind of like you know, messing up what people are thinking. If I had super bright colors here, it would confuse people that I'm telling them to wear neutral colors, and so I wanted it to all kind of go together like that. I click down, it explains the bottoms a woman should wear, basic things like shouldn't be too short, should be comfortable but still fitted, and just sort of explaining everything about that. And you go down to the shoes, also explaining how they should be neutral color. Button is down there by the shoes so that they know if they click that, they'll be getting the information about that section. So yeah, I really, just the main things that I can go back to my beginning. Okay, so yeah, some of the main things I really just wanted to focus on were how to solve the problem in an easy to use way. And basically I just really wanted it to be user-friendly, and overall I wanted them to know how to click through it and feel like they really understand that the information they're receiving with the use of all the visuals and everything. At first I had forgot to make the navigation buttons. That was one of the problems that I ran into. I ended up testing it on a friend. I had them originally trying to click through it, and since they weren't designing it, they were able to pick up on the kind of usability issues better than I was, because I knew what it was supposed to do and they didn't, which was good because a user typically would not understand what they're to do with it. So I had them use it, and then they realized, they're like, oh, well, I'm on the girls page, but now I can't. What if I want to go back and look at the guys? And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. So I made an area where you can go back and select the guys, and that way you're able to kind of do both. So that was one issue I ran into, but luckily I was able to solve that when I tested out the final product and fixed that. Overall, I'm really pleased with my final design, the way it's turned out. I definitely think I achieved my goal of creating a solution to the problem. There were a couple moments where I struggled while making the design. I had to troubleshoot some things, like trying to get these in the order that I wanted them. It was originally making this last one here, the make a great first impression, that text box was showing up first, and I wanted the apply to a job one to show up first, and so I had to kind of Google and look at a couple forums on how to fix that, but I was able to figure it out. And then I was very pleased with the way the tutorials helped me um, with figuring out how to do the little slideshow from when we used the Pangolin assignment. I used that actually quite a few times. That was probably my favorite element that it allowed me to do. It really, I think, kind of made the whole design. It was sort of what I based it around and wanting to have that slideshow effect. So yeah, overall, I was able to troubleshoot any of my major issues with tutorials in different forums I found. I really think creating this interactive design has really put the rest of the content that we have learned in this course sort of into perspective for me, and I think I understand a lot of it better now that I have created a design myself.